He smashed a $6,500 cake in my face and called me nobody at my daughter's wedding. He had no idea who I was. He shoved my face into a $6,500 cake in front of 300 people and called me a nobody. What Trent Caldwell III didn't know was that I owned the building we were standing in. Actually, I owned 12 other properties across the city too. But we'll get to that. My name is James Earl Washington. I'm 67 years old. I've been a maintenance man for 41 years. That's what everybody thinks anyway. The truth is a bit more complicated, but let me start from the beginning. I came up from Greenville, South Carolina in 1983, 24 years old, $175 in my pocket, and a cousin named Ray who had a connection to a building management company in Atlanta. Night shift, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, fixing busted pipes, cleaning bathrooms that smelled like regret. $6.50 an hour. Back then, that felt like winning. Those first years were brutal. I slept on a cot in a utility room to save on rent. Ramen noodles for breakfast. Cornbread if I was lucky at night. I sent what little I could back to my mother in Greenville, a woman who had worked double shifts at a textile mill her entire life and never once complained. She was the strongest person I ever knew. I learned what endurance looked like from watching her, but I also watched the building. I watched which tenants were always late, which units sat empty month after month, how much money the owner was pulling in while he drove past in a Cadillac without so much as a nod. I kept a notebook, wrote down everything. Vacancy rates, maintenance costs, what a unit could rent for versus what it was actually renting for. Numbers have always told me the truth, that people tried to hide by 1995. I'd saved enough for a down payment on my first property, a small multi-unit over in Vine City. Nothing fancy. 2 floors, 6 units, a leaking roof on one side. The loan officer at the bank looked at me the way people look at something they don't want to touch. "You're in maintenance?" He said. "Yes, sir," I told him. Then I opened my folder and showed him 12 years of savings records, meticulous as a surgeon. He got quiet real fast. I got my loan. I never stopped working maintenance. Even as I bought more properties, 8, 10, then 12, I kept showing up in my gray uniform. Kept driving the same 2006 Silverado with a cracked dashboard. People in my buildings didn't know I owned them. I hired a management company to handle the face of things. It kept me grounded. My mother always said pride was something you felt on the inside, not something you wore on the outside. She was right. She usually was. My wife, Denise, left me in 2014. Said she was tired of pretending. We were regular when we weren't. Said she wanted a life that matched what was in the bank account. She moved to Charlotte with a man who sold luxury real estate and wore too much cologne. I didn't fight her on it. Denise made her choices. You can love someone and still recognize when the two of you want different things. We had 2 kids together. My son Marcus is 35 now, lives in Houston, works in cybersecurity. We talk maybe once a month, mostly over text. He's a good man, just busy, and we've never been as close as I'd hoped. But my daughter Simone is my whole heart. She's 30 years old, teaches 5th grade at a Title I public school in Atlanta's West End neighborhood. Smart doesn't even cover it. Simone can walk into a room and rate every person in it inside 30 seconds. She has her grandmother's spine and her mother's beauty and my stubbornness. She grew up knowing we had some money put aside, but she didn't know how much. I wanted her to grow up understanding that you work for what you have, that you earn your own respect, that no inheritance is a substitute for character. I wanted her to find a man who saw her Simone Washington, the woman, and not some future payout. Then she brought home Trent Caldwell, I. It was a Sunday in February when Simone first brought him to my place. I live in a modest two-bedroom condo in a building I own in the old Fourth Ward, though I keep that detail to myself. I answered the door in my usual weekend outfit. Worn falcon sweatshirt, track pants, house slippers. Trent was tall, well-dressed. I later found out it was a $2,800 suit, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never being told no. His family had been in Atlanta banking and investment for 2 generations. He shook my hand like he was doing me a favor. "Mr. Washington," he said. "Trent Caldwell. Simone has told me so much about you. I've been looking forward to this." "Call me James," I said. "Come in." We sat in my small living room. Simone made tea. I watched Trent's eyes move around the room, the old sofa, the second-hand bookshelves, the flat-screen TV that was at least 6 years past stylish. You could see him calculating, filing things away. "Simone tells me you're in property maintenance," he said eventually. "That's right. Buildings all over the city. Been doing it most of my life. Good, honest work," he said. His voice was warm. His eyes said something different. When Simone stepped out to take a phone call, Trent leaned forward like we were old friends sharing a confidence. "James, I want to be straight with you, man to man. I want to make sure Simone is going to be taken care of properly going forward. What does your situation look like financially?" There it was. Said with a smile, but there it was. "We get by," I said. "Simone's got her teacher's salary. I've got retirement coming." He nodded slowly, like that was about what he expected. "The Caldwell family has a certain standard," he said carefully. "I just want to make sure there aren't going to be any awkward gaps, you know? No offense meant." I told him none taken. I already knew what kind of man I was looking at when they left. I stood at the window and watched Trent's new Benz ease out of the parking lot. I called Marcus that night. "Dad," he said, "it's after 11 here." "I know. I forget the time zones. What do you think about this Trent guy?" Marcus was quiet for a second. "I think you need to tell Simone the truth before this gets too serious. She needs to make her own choice," I said. "And she needs to do it with her eyes open. Those are 2 different things, Dad." He wasn't wrong. But I wasn't ready to make that call yet. The engagement happened fast. 6 weeks later, Trent proposed at Bowen's restaurant in Buckhead. Massive diamond. Simone called me at midnight, crying happy tears, laughing, barely making sense. I told her I was happy for her, and I meant part of it. The part that was happy was the part that loved seeing joy on her face, even when something deeper in me was sitting very still, watching. "We want to keep it small, Daddy," she said. "Close family, maybe a nice dinner venue. Simple and us. Whatever you want," I told her. "I'll walk you down that aisle and be the proudest man in Georgia." 3 weeks later, she came to my place on a Tuesday evening. Still in her school clothes, tired-eyed, her bag over one shoulder like she'd come straight from work. She sat on the couch and held her tea in both hands and stared at the floor for a moment before she spoke. That's how I knew it was serious. Simone always looks you dead in the eye unless something's hurting her. "Trent wants to change the wedding," she said. "How big are we talking?" 300 guests. His family's associates, old college friends, business contacts. He already found a venue. The Grand Palmetto Ballroom downtown. "Daddy, I looked it up. The venue alone is $55,000. I didn't react. $55,000 meant about as much to me as a parking ticket. "What do you want, baby?" I asked She set down her mug and looked up at me with those eyes. "I wanted the backyard. I wanted string lights and a DJ and Marcus's ribs on the grill. I wanted Aunt Cheryl dancing by 9 o'clock. She let out a small, sad laugh. Trent says that's embarrassing. He says we need to make a statement. A statement about what? About who we are. About our status. She paused. He also said his connections could get me a position at a private school. Double my salary. Do you want to leave your kids? She shook her head without hesitating. No, those kids need me. I'm not going anywhere. Then tell him that. I put my hand over hers. Simone, you've never needed anyone to hand you a life. You built yours yourself. Don't let anybody make you ashamed of that. She looked at me for a long moment. Ben, Daddy, would you help pay for it? I know it's a lot. I know you don't have. I'll pay for it, I said. All of it? 300 and something thousand dollars. Just, I'll pay for it. She stared at me. Daddy, your pension. I've been saving for 41 years, I said. You're my daughter. You only do this once. If this is what it takes for you to have one day where you don't worry about a single thing, I'll make it happen. She hugged me then hard, the way she used to when she was little and something scared her. I held on and thought about her grandmother, who'd worked her fingers to the bone and never asked for a single thing, and I thought, this is what it's all for. The next 3 months were something else. Trent took over. He didn't consult me. He didn't consult Simone, not really. He made decisions and sent me invoices. The venue, $55,000 plus $18,000 for premium setup and lighting. Catering, $90,000 for a 7-course dinner with paired wines. Flowers, $28,000, all imported. The band, $22,000. Some group his fraternity brother vouched for. Simone's dress. She'd wanted something simple, elegant, under $1,000. Trent insisted on a designer gown from a shop on Peachtree. $17,000. The cake, custom design from a celebrity pastry chef Trent followed on Instagram. $6,500. I paid every invoice without a word. I transferred money from my holding accounts. Trent never once asked where it was coming from. It never seemed to occur to him that a maintenance man writing 6-figure checks might warrant a question or two. He was too busy planning the perfect party. His party. I met his parents once. Dinner at their house in Buckhead. Big colonial revival with columns out front. I noticed the gutters needed work, and the driveway had cracks running through it. Trent's father, Trent Caldwell II, was a large man with silver at his temples and an expression that suggested he'd spent his whole life deciding who was worth his time. He shook my hand with 2 fingers. His wife, Patricia, looked me over with the kind of eyes that sort people into categories before they've said a word. Maintenance work, Reginald said, after Trent mentioned what I did. Honorable. The way he said it meant the opposite. Patricia leaned over her wine glass. James, we've been thinking. After the wedding, Reginald and I feel it might be wise to discuss some arrangements. There are some very lovely senior communities near our side of town. Reasonable pricing. We'd hate for you to become a burden on the young couple as you get on in years. Simone's fork hit the plate. Excuse me? Sweetheart, Patricia said, in that voice women use when they're condescending and pretending to be kind at the same time. We're just being practical. Your father's at an age where... I stood up. Simone, we're leaving. In the car, she was shaking. Not from sadness, from fury. That's the thing about strong women. They don't fall apart. They ignite. Daddy, I am so sorry. I didn't know they were going to. It's not your fault. She was quiet most of the way home. Then, do you think I'm making a mistake? I thought about it for a long time. I think you already know the answer to that question, I said finally. And I think you're brave enough to ask it which means you're brave enough to act on it when the time comes." She didn't say anything else, but I saw her jaw set in that way she has, the way that looks exactly like her grandmother, and I knew she was paying attention now. The wedding was set for a Saturday in April. Clear skies. Warm for the season. The grand Palmetto Ballroom looked exactly as magnificent as it was supposed to look. It should have. I'd bought it 11 years ago, gutted it down to the bones, and rebuilt it from scratch. I arrived early in my rented tuxedo. It fit a little loose in the shoulders and a little snug at the waist, which is exactly how a rented tuxedo is supposed to fit. I'd insisted on the cheapest option on the rack. The woman at the rental shop had tried to upsell me twice. I smiled and pointed at the one on the bottom shelf. Stay in character. I found Simone in the bridal suite on the 3rd floor, surrounded by her bridesmaids, her cousin Kaisha, who'd driven up from Savannah, and a makeup artist who was doing things with brushes that looked more like surgery than beauty. Simone was sitting very still in the center of it all, which was how I knew something was off. Simone Washington does not sit still. She paces. She talks with her hands. She fills rooms. She saw me come in, and something in her face softened. Daddy. She stood up carefully, so nothing smeared, and hugged me around the neck. I held her and didn't say anything for a moment. "You look like your grandmother on her wedding day," I said quietly. That made her eyes fill up, which made Kaisha yell at me from across the room for messing up the makeup. "Are you nervous?" I asked. "Is it normal to feel like the ground is tilting?" "A little tilt is normal." She laughed, and it almost sounded right. "Brandon's been texting me since 6 this morning. The centerpieces are 2 inches too tall. The cocktail napkins are the wrong ivory. The band set up on the wrong side of the stage." She looked at me. "It's our wedding day, Daddy. I haven't gotten a single text that said, 'I love you,' or 'I can't wait to see you.' Just complaints." I didn't say what I was thinking. I kissed her forehead instead. "You're the smartest woman I know," I said. "You'll figure out what you need to figure out." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away somewhere important. Kaisha handed her a glass of champagne, and she drank it faster than was wise. Went downstairs. The ballroom was something to behold. All white and gold, the way Trent had demanded. Thousands of roses, crystal chandeliers on full brightness, candles everywhere. It looked like somebody had given a very wealthy child a blank check and no supervision. Gorgeous and cold at the same time. I found my seat on the groom's side. They'd mixed the seating and watched the room fill up. Trent's side packed in fast. Expensive suits, designer dresses, that particular brand of loud laughter that comes from people who've never had to be careful about anything. My side was smaller, warmer. Simone's teacher colleagues from West End Elementary. My cousin Ray from Greenville, who'd gotten me my first job 40 years ago and was now pushing 70 and still sharp as a tack. A few long-time neighbors. They looked slightly out of place in the grandeur of it all, but they held their heads up. They always do. People who've actually built something don't need a fancy room to feel solid. My business partner, Gloria Reeves, arrived 10 minutes before the ceremony. We've owned 4 commercial properties together, going on 15 years. I'd invited her without mentioning whose wedding it was, mostly because I wanted at least one person in the room who knew the full picture if things went sideways. She spotted me from across the ballroom and made her way over, genuinely confused. ***, James Washington. Why are you at this wedding? She looked around. Whose wedding is this? My daughter's. Her mouth fell open. You're Simone? James, why didn't you tell me? I would have brought something proper. Just being here is enough. She sat down next to me, still shaking her head slowly. Does she know? About the portfolio, the properties, any of it? No, Lord James. She looked at me with that expression women get when they've already figured out 3 steps ahead of where you are. You better hope this goes smooth. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give Trent that much. The man had taste, even if he had nothing else. When Simone appeared at the back of the aisle, I had to breathe through my nose twice before I trusted myself to stand up straight. She was radiant. Not in the way wedding photographers use that word. Genuinely radiant, like something was lit up behind her eyes, even through the nerves. I walked her down that aisle and tried to memorize every single second of it. The weight of her hand on my arm. The way she glanced at me once, right before we reached the altar, with a look that said 100 things and none of them were about Trent Caldwell. Trent waited at the altar in a custom tuxedo, looking every bit the part. He whispered something to Simone when I placed her hand in his, and she smiled. I stepped back and told myself to believe in people's capacity to surprise you. I almost managed it. The vows were traditional, short. When it was done and the officiant pronounced them married, Trent dipped Simone dramatically for the kiss, and the room erupted. I clapped with everyone else and breathed through the 2. Tightness in my chest. The reception moved to the adjoining salon for cocktail hour. Open bar, top shelf, exactly as ordered. I found a corner near the windows and watched the room the way I've watched rooms my whole life, quietly, carefully, taking inventory. Trent was working the crowd like a politician 3 weeks before an election. Glad-handing, backslapping, volume rising with every drink he accepted from passing trays. I watched him introduce Simone to people whose names she'd forget by morning, steering her by the elbow like a prop in a show he was producing. Simone smiled at everyone. But I know my daughter smiles, and I know the difference between the real ones and the ones she deploys when she's managing a situation. She found me eventually and pulled me over to meet Trent's college friends, a cluster of men in tailored suits who were already 2 drinks past professional. Guys, this is my dad, James Washington. They looked at me the way you look at the valet when he brings your car around. Polite enough, but not really seeing you. Hey man, one of them said. Big thanks for bankrolling all this. Must have taken some serious planning on a maintenance salary. He laughed like it was a compliment. Another one. What exactly do you maintain? Like apartment buildings? Something like that, I said. They'd already moved on before I finished the sentence. Trent appeared behind me, arm coming over my shoulder, whiskey breath warm near my ear. He was past buzzed and heading somewhere uglier. James, my man, I keep meaning to find you and say thank you properly. He said it loud, making sure the people nearby could hear him being gracious. Real talk, what you did, scraping all that together for Simone's big day, that's beautiful. That's a father's love right there. It's my pleasure, I said. No, seriously. You're a good man. Old school, hard-working, the kind of integrity you just don't see anymore. He raised his glass toward a passing waiter. Another one. Top shelf. James here is picking up the tab, anyway. He laughed at his own joke. A few people around us laughed too, uncertain whether it was funny or not. Brandon, I said quietly, maybe slow down a little. I'm celebrating, he said. It's my wedding. I'll drink what I want. Dinner was 7 courses, each one more elaborate than the last. The kind of meal where you're still eating 3 hours later and somehow still not full in the way that matters. I watched Trent get louder between courses, watched Simone's posture get more careful. A woman will carry so much weight in her body before she ever lets it show on her face. I've watched women do it my whole life. My mother, my grandmother, Simone. They hold things together with quiet strength that men like Trent never even notice because they're too busy taking up space between the 5th and 6th courses. Trent stood and clinked his glass. He swayed just slightly, Not enough for people who didn't know him to notice, but enough for me. "I want to say something," he announced. The room settled. "This woman right here, my wife," he paused for the applause, soaked it in, "is the most beautiful woman on the planet. Simone, I mean that." He looked at her. She smiled the managed smile. Then he turned to me. "And James Washington. I want to give a special shout-out to the man who made all of this possible." He spread his arms wide at the ballroom around us. This man worked his whole life in maintenance, so his daughter could have one perfect day. That kind of sacrifice, that's real love. That's humble, hard-working, salt-of-the-earth stuff right there. He said it with genuine warmth, which almost made it worse. It was the warmth of a man who thought he was being generous when he was actually being condescending. People applauded. Some looked moved. I saw Simone staring at her water glass. "So I want to promise you, James, from this day forward, you don't have to worry about Simone anymore. She's a Caldwell now. We'll take care of everything." He raised his glass. "To the janitor who loved his daughter enough to give her a Caldwell wedding." More applause. Somebody at Trent's table whooped. I looked at Simone. She was still looking at her water glass, like it owed her an apology after dinner. The band started in on the first dance. Trent and Simone moved well together. I'll admit that. Then it was my turn. I held my daughter on that dance floor and tried to be fully present in the moment. Her perfume, the warmth of her hand in mine, the way she still fit under my arm, the same way she had at her 8th grade formal when I was the emergency backup date because her boyfriend had food poisoning. "You okay?" I said quietly. "Ask me again in a year," she said. Then, "No, I'm okay. I'm just tired and Trent is. He's just excited." "It's a big night." "It is," I agreed. "Daddy," she looked up at me. "Did you really spend all that? All of it? Your savings?" "I told you I would. I just keep thinking about what it cost you." "Don't," I said. "Not tonight. Tonight you just dance." She rested her head on my shoulder for the last 8 bars of the song. I kissed the top of her hair and let her go. Then came the cake dot. It was wheeled out on a special chrome cart by 2 staff members, who handled it like it contained something sacred. 5 tiers. White fondant with hand-painted gold leaf. Sugar flowers cascading from top to bottom. It was genuinely one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. And I say that as a man who has stood in front of some of the finest architecture in the Southeast. $6,500 of precision craft on a rolling cart. Simone and Trent posed for the photographs. The photographer directed them like a traffic cop. Knife together, big smiles, look at each other, now the camera. They cut the small ceremonial slice. Fed each other. Simone did it gently, deliberately. Trent smeared a little frosting on her nose, and the room laughed. Then Trent drained his champagne glass, grabbed another from a passing tray, and drained half of that. His groomsman Darius leaned over and said something to him. Trent shook him off with an irritated wave. I was maybe 10 feet away, moving toward the exit corridor to find the men's room. That's when Trent saw me. "James," he called out, louder than necessary. "You haven't had any cake yet. Can't have that. You paid for the thing." "I'll get a slice in a minute," I said. No. He was moving toward the cake cart. "Come on, right now. Man of the hour gets first taste." Something in his voice had shifted. The warmth was gone. What was left was something meaner, looser, the kind of thing that lives in a man and usually stays, hidden but starts leaking out when the inhibitions go down. He reached into the bottom tier with his bare hand, grabbed a fistful of cake, destroyed an entire section of that $6,500 masterpiece in one motion. Simone's eyes went wide. "Trent, Your daddy needs to taste what he paid for. He was grinning, but his eyes weren't in it. Son, I don't think. Don't call me son. The room went quiet. That fast, that complete. 300 people, and you could hear the candles burning. I'm not your son. You're the maintenance man who spent his retirement savings trying to buy his daughter a seat at a table she wasn't born to sit at. He walked toward me with the cake in his fist. I saw it coming. I had time to step back. I didn't step back. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand still and let the truth come to you. He smashed it into my face, hard, frosting in my eyes, up my nose, down the collar of my rented tuxedo. I heard gasps from every direction. Someone made a sound that might have been a laugh, but stopped itself halfway. I stood there, cake dripping off my chin. 300 people watching. Trent turned to the room with his arms raised like he'd just scored. Come on, lighten up, y'all. It's a wedding. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. 300 people looking at a woman's father standing with cake on his face. He turned back to me. What, you going to cry? You going to fire me? He laughed at that. You're the janitor, James? This, he gestured at the ballroom, the chandeliers, the roses, the whole magnificent room. This is my world. You just rented a seat in it. He looked at me for a moment longer, deciding whether to say the next thing. He said it. Nobody. That word. Said loud enough for the whole room to carry it home. I slowly wiped frosting from my eyes. Looked at him. Didn't say a word. From the back of the ballroom, a door opened. A man came through those ballroom doors, moving with the kind of quiet purpose that parts crowds without asking. My son, Marcus. He'd flown in from Houston. I'd sent him the invitation, knowing he probably couldn't make it. And he'd shown up anyway, straight from Hartsfield. Carry-on still in his hand, still in his travel clothes. He stopped when he saw me. The crowd between us went still. Marcus looked at his father standing in a rented tuxedo with $6,500 worth of cake dripping off his face. And something in his expression went from confused to cold in about a second and a half. Dad, he pushed the rest of the way through the crowd. What happened? It's fine, son. Who did this? Trent stepped forward, still grinning, still riding whatever wave he was on. Who are you? Marcus ignored him completely, which I could see bothered Trent more than any confrontation would have. He looked me over carefully, then looked at Simone, who had both hands pressed over her mouth, tears tracking mascara down both cheeks. She'd stopped trying to manage the situation. Some things you just have to let land. Dad, Marcus said quietly, I'm calling Mr. Devon. Don't. Who's Mr. Devon? Trent demanded that Marcus was already dialing. Devon, it's Marcus Washington. I'm at the Grand Palmetto. Grand Ballroom. My father needs you. Yes, right now. He hung up. Trent looked at Simone. Babe, who are these people? Simone looked at him for a long moment. Something had shifted behind her eyes in the last 60 seconds. It was subtle, the way important things usually are. A door closing. A decision made. She didn't answer him. The room waited. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. Then the ballroom doors opened again, and Devon Okafor walked in. He's been the general manager of the Grand Palmetto for 9 years. I hired him personally, gave him his first real shot at a management role when he was 28 years old, and 2 other hotel groups had passed on him. He is one of the most composed professionals I've ever known. When he came through those doors and saw me standing there with cake on my face, his composure cracked just slightly. A quick blink, a tightening around the eyes before he locked it back down. He crossed the room in long strides. Mr. Washington. He pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket and started carefully helping me clean my face. Sir, are you all right? What happened here? The room got quieter than it had been all night. Trent frowned. Mr. Washington? This is James. He does maintenance. Devon turned and looked at Trent the way a man looks at something he doesn't have much patience for. He does, he said. Among other things, Mr. James Earl Washington owns the Grand Palmetto. Has owned it for 11 years. I'm his general manager. He turned back to me. Sir, do you want me to handle this? I have played poker exactly twice in my life and lost both times, but I know what it looks like when a man's entire hand falls face up on the table. I watched it happen to Trent Caldwell III in real time. Confusion first, moving fast into disbelief, then into something that looked like the floor dropping out from underneath him. The owner, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a man trying the word out to see if it changed shape. For 11 years, Devon confirmed. Without looking at him, Trent turned to Simone. You told me he was in maintenance. I told you he worked in property management, Simone said. Her voice was quiet and steady, in the way that means a woman has already done the hard internal work and come out the other side. His properties. Gloria stood up from her seat near the front. She didn't raise her voice, but it carried. James, I'm sorry, I didn't realize what was happening sooner. I would have been at your side. She looked at Simone with warm eyes. Sweetheart, congratulations. Your father and I have been business partners for 15 years. Washington Property Group manages close to $180 million in commercial real estate across Atlanta and 3 surrounding counties. 12 buildings at last count. Trent grabbed the edge of the nearest table. Actually grabbed it, knuckles going light, to hold himself upright. His father Reginald, from somewhere in the middle of the room, had gone the color of old chalk. His mother Patricia had her hand pressed flat against her chest like she was trying to hold her heart in place. Trent's groomsman Darius said, very quietly, Bro, Washington Property Group. My uncle's law firm rents 2 floors from them downtown. Darius, Trent said, I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. The room was completely alive with silence. The kind of silence that has texture. I wiped the last of the cake from my collar and looked at Trent, not with anger. With something quieter than anger and more permanent. When you asked for my daughter's hand, I said yes. Not because I liked you. I didn't. But because Simone loved you, and I have spent 30 years trying to respect her judgment and her right to make her own choices. That's what you do when you raise a daughter, right? You teach her she's capable, and then you trust her, even when it's hard. James, I didn't know. I held up one hand. I paid for this wedding. Every dollar of it. Over $300,000, all in. Not because you deserved it. Because my daughter deserved one day where she felt celebrated and free and not worried about a single thing. Women spend so much of their lives managing everyone else's feelings, holding things together, smoothing things over. Simone does it in her classroom every day for kids who don't have anybody else in their corner. She deserved one day of not managing anything. Simone made a sound that wasn't quite a word. You called me nobody in my own building, I said. In front of my family. In front of 300 people. Because you looked at a man in a rented tuxedo and decided you already knew everything there was to know about him. I paused. That tells me a great deal more about you than it does about me. Trent opened his mouth. I'm not finished. He closed it. I wore simple clothes my whole life because my mother wore simple clothes her whole life and worked twice as hard as any man. Around her, and never once asked to be recognized for it. I did maintenance in my own buildings because staying connected to that work kept me honest. I lived modest because I watched my wife leave when the money started feeling like the whole point, and I didn't want that for my kids. I looked at him steadily. You looked at all of that and saw weakness. That's your limitation, not mine. I turned to Devon. Please refund the venue deposit to my account. Cancel the honeymoon suite booking for tonight. Cancel the Hawaii reservation. 2 weeks at the Kahala, first class, the whole package. All of it under my name. Simone's breath caught. Daddy, baby girl. Consequences have to mean something, or they don't mean anything. I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I'd had my attorney prepare it 3 days prior, the morning after I sat alone in my kitchen at 6 a.m. and finally admitted to myself how this day was probably going to go. This is a postnuptial agreement, I said. Standard language. You sign it. You waive all claims to marital assets and any inheritance Simone may receive in the event of divorce. You also acknowledge today's incident in writing. Trent stared at the envelope like it was a live thing. You had this ready. I had it prepared. There's a difference. And if I don't sign it, then I make 3 phone calls to the 3 largest commercial property management networks in Atlanta, all of whom I have long relationships with. Then Trent Caldwell III never gets a lease, a referral, or a returned call in this city again. Not for office space. Not for retail. Not for a storage unit. I said it the same way I say everything. Quiet, level. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you the shape of the situation so you can make an informed decision. His hand shook as he took the pen Devon produced from his breast pocket. He signed it with the unsteady signature of a man whose world has just been fundamentally rearranged. I folded it back into my pocket. Then I turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to be part of this tonight. The bar is open. The band is paid for the rest of the evening. Please enjoy yourselves. I paused. One old maintenance man's unsolicited advice, the most dangerous assumption you can make about any person, is that you already know their whole story. You almost never do. The applause started in the back. Gloria first, then Ray, then Simone's colleagues from West End Elementary, then most of the room, building until it filled the whole ballroom. Standing, all of it, Trent's family didn't clap. Reginald was already guiding Patricia toward the side exit, both of them moving with the particular urgency of people who want to be somewhere else before the full weight of a thing lands on them. Darius and the other groomsmen scattered like they'd just remembered somewhere. They needed to be. Trent stood alone at the edge of the dance floor. Simone walked over to the dessert table. She slid her engagement ring off her finger, slowly, deliberately, the way a woman moves when she's completely certain of something, and set it down next to what remained of the demolished cake. I don't think I want to be a Caldwell after all, she said. Not to the room, just to the air in front of her. Calm as a clear morning. Trent said, Simone, please. I'm 30 years old, she said, turning to look at him. I'm old enough to know when I made a wrong turn, and I'm old enough to correct it. She looked at him for a moment longer, not with hatred, not with dramatics, just with the clear-eyed assessment of a woman who has decided she is done spending energy on something that was never worth it. I hope you figure yourself out, Trent. I genuinely do. Just somewhere else. She walked over to me. She didn't care about the cake residue still on my jacket. She just held on. Marcus joined us from the other side. My 2 kids, right there, while the band started playing again, and 300 people gradually remembered how to exhale. Over Simone's shoulder, I watched Trent make his way to the exit. At the door, he stopped and said something to Darius. I couldn't hear it. Darius shook his head slowly and walked in the other direction. Devon appeared at my elbow. Mr. Washington, what would you like done with the suite arrangements? Keep the family suite for us. My kids and I are ordering room service and watching whatever's on cable. Excellent choice, sir. Gloria materialized with a stack of cocktail napkins and started helping me clean up properly, shaking her head and half laughing in that way she has. James Washington. 12 buildings, $180 million portfolio, and you showed up to your daughter's wedding in a $40 rental tux. $42, I said. I splurged on the cummerbund. Simone laughed, a real one this time, sudden and surprised out of her, the kind that has tears behind it. She pressed her forehead against my shoulder. Daddy, I have so many questions. We have all night, I said. We went upstairs to the family suite. 3 sides of windows. City lights in every direction. Simone changed out of the $17,000 gown and into the sweatpants she'd packed in her overnight bag, because Simone always packs sweatpants, no matter the occasion, which is one of about 900 things I love about her. Marcus ordered what seemed like half the room service menu. We sat on the big sectional couch and ate burgers and sweet potato fries and talked until the city outside started going quiet. She wanted to know everything. How it started. Why I never told her. Why I kept working maintenance. I told her about coming up from Greenville with $175 and a cousin's phone number. About the utility room cot and the ramen noodles. About the notebook I kept, watching the building owners get rich, while men like me kept their buildings running. About saving for 12 years and walking into that bank in my work clothes and watching the loan officer's expression change when I opened my folder. You still do maintenance in your own buildings, she said. It wasn't quite a question. Somebody has to make sure the heat works and the lights stay on. And it reminds me what matters. I never want to be so far from where I started that I can't remember why I worked this hard in the first place. You're ridiculous, Marcus said. But he was smiling. He'd been smiling more in the last 3 hours than I'd seen in the last 3 years. Your grandmother wasn't ridiculous, I said. I learned everything from her. She worked harder than anyone in that textile mill and never asked for a thing except to be treated with basic dignity. I think about her every time I pick up a mop. Simone was quiet for a moment. Then, what about the money? What happens now? Nothing changes, I said. I keep working. You keep teaching. Your kids in West End need you. Don't let anybody ever convince you that what you do isn't valuable because it doesn't come with a car service and a corner office. The women who show up for children every single day, teachers, mothers, grandmothers, they're holding the whole thing together. They always have been. The least I can do is hold something together for you. She cried again. Happy tears, this time. The kind that clean things out. We stayed up past 2 in the morning. Made plans for the annulment. Her attorney would handle it, and given Trent's hidden debts, which I'd had investigated 4 weeks earlier, and which totaled somewhere north of $280,000 in credit cards and personal loans. The grounds would be straightforward. We talked about her apartment, which Trent knew the address of, and I offered her a 2-bedroom in one of my midtown buildings, 3 blocks from her school, with a balcony facing east. She argued with me for 6 minutes before she accepted. We talked about a lot of things. And somewhere around midnight, Marcus said, Dad, I'm coming back more often. And I didn't make a big deal of it. Just nodded and handed him the last of the sweet potato fries. Because that's how you accept something important from your son without making him feel like he has to live up to it. 6 months later, the annulment was finalized. Trent's hidden financial picture fully surfaced during the legal process. The credit card debt, 2 personal loans in default, a car lease 3 payments behind. The annulment was granted on fraud grounds without contest. His family's investment firm filed for bankruptcy 4 months after the wedding. Reginald Caldwell II was facing a separate civil suit from 3 former clients. Patricia Caldwell sent me a handwritten letter of apology. I read it once and put it in a drawer. Trent, last I heard, had moved back into his parents' house in Buckhead and was doing sales work somewhere on the north side. I didn't feel good about that. I didn't feel bad about it either. People build their own outcomes. You can't rescue someone from the consequences of who they chose to be. Simone moved into the Midtown condo in October. She painted it herself, took 2 weekends, invited Kaisha up from Savannah, made a whole thing of it. She adopted a cat she named after her grandmother. She started therapy, which took courage in the way that quiet things often take more courage than loud ones. She's still at West End Elementary, still teaching her 5th graders, still the person those kids look for when the day gets hard. In January, she started seeing a man named Andre Collins. He teaches high school history 3 miles away, drives a sensible sedan, knew exactly who her father was from the first conversation, and said, very directly, that it had nothing to do with why he was asking her to dinner. She told me that story, and I liked him before I'd ever met him. He came to my place last month, Sunday afternoon. I answered the door in my usual weekend outfit. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, and said, Mr. Washington, I know Simone's story, and I know some of yours. I'm not here because of any of it. I just want you to know I see her clearly, and I'm not going anywhere. I let him sweat for about 45 seconds. Then I handed him a cup of tea and told him to call me James. He and Simone are talking about a small wedding. Late summer, maybe. Her friend's property out in Fayette County. Outdoor ceremony, string lights, and good food, and people who actually love them. Maybe 80 guests, maybe fewer. Simone's already found a dress she likes. Simple, elegant, somewhere around $400. She texted me a picture of it at 11 on a Tuesday night with 3 question mark emojis. Perfect. I wrote back. That's you. She sent back a heart. I'll pay for the whole thing again. Probably run somewhere around $8,000 or $9,000 for everything. It'll be the best money I ever spent. People ask me sometimes whether I regret the $300,000 I spent on the first wedding. I don't. Not $1. Some lessons can only be learned in full. Simone needed to see who Trent was in a setting where he had no reason to hide it. Better to learn it at a wedding than to learn it after a decade of marriage, a mortgage, and children who'd spend the rest of their lives moving between 2 households. The money bought clarity. That's a fair price. I'm still doing maintenance. Still driving my '06 Silverado. Still living in my modest 2-bedroom in the old 4th Ward. My accountant sends me quarterly reports that suggest I should retire. Diversify, maybe buy a boat. I tell him I'm thinking about it. My mother used to say that what a person does when nobody's watching tells you everything you need to know about them. She worked her whole life in a mill that didn't pay her what she was worth. Raised 3 kids who all turned out decent, and never once made her strength into a performance. She just was who she was, every single day without an audience. I've tried to live like that. Stay humble. Stay connected. Do the work. Take care of the people who need taking care of. Don't confuse what's in your bank account with who you are. Trent Caldwell looked at me and saw a janitor. He saw the uniform and the old truck and the rented tuxedo, and he decided he already had the whole picture. He never asked a single question, never wondered, never considered that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing to prove. I'm still just James, still the guy who shows up in the morning and makes sure the heat works and the lights stay on. Still the man who came up from Greenville with $175 and a cousin's phone number and a notebook full of observations about the way money really moves through the world. I just happen to own the buildings where I do it. And for a man who started with $175, that's more than enough. Thank you for being here. and letting me share my story. If it touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me what city and state you're watching from. I love knowing where you all are. If you want to support me even more, there's a donation link in the description. I share real-life stories like this every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular videos will appear on your screen. Choose whichever one calls to you. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over just because someone tried to write the ending without you.